us up. If we are prepared to stand up to powerful and wealthy and greedy special interests, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish, no goal that we cannot achieve, and that includes making fundamental changes in the way we fund higher education in our country. Percentage of young Americans with college degrees. We were number 1. Today, we are number 15, and that is not acceptable. And that is why Secretary Clinton and I understand that in today's world, when we talk about public education, it's no longer good enough to talk about the first grade through high school. That was good. That was wonderful 30 or 40 years ago. It is not enough today. And today, when we talk about public education, it must mean making public colleges and universities tuition-free for the middle class and working families of this country. Now, during the campaign, the primary campaign, Secretary Clinton had some very strong proposals. I had a different approach. But we came together after the campaign and reached an agreement that says that every family in this country earning $125,000 or less, that is 83% of our population, should be able to send their kids to public colleges and universities tuition-free. And make no mistake about it, this is a revolutionary proposal for the future of our country with wide-reaching implications. It means that first, students will not be leaving college with outrageous levels of student debt. I went all over this country during the campaign, and I talked to too many young people and people who were not so young, who were paying off student debts of $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, and in some cases, it was taking them decades to pay off those debts. I want young people to leave school excited about the future, the new businesses they'll open up, getting married, having kids, buying a house, not being saddled with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. And secondly, making public colleges and universities tuition-free does something even more profound than just reducing student debt. In my state of Vermont, here in New Hampshire, and throughout this country, there are millions of low-income and working-class families with kids who don't know anybody who graduated college. Their parents didn't graduate college. My parents never went to college. And they are thinking to themselves, there is no way in God's earth that they are ever going to make it through college and into the middle class. What this proposal, Secretary Clinton's proposal, tells us is that if you are a low-income family, a working-class family, if your kid studies hard and does well, yes, regardless of the income of your family, your kid will be able to make it into college. That is a big deal. Today, hundreds of thousands of bright and qualified young people do not get a higher education for one reason and one reason alone: their family lacks the income. That is unfair to those families. It is unfair to the future of this country. How many great scientists and engineers and teachers and police officers are out there who will never get a chance to do what they could do because of lack of income of their families? Secretary Clinton and I are going to change that. If you have the ability, you will be able to get a college education. And while we are going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free for the middle class and working families of this country, we are also mindful that there are millions of people out there who have already incurred deep debt, and we intend to change that and lower those student debts as well. It makes no sense to us that when you can go get an automobile loan, refinance your home for 2%, 3%, 4%, that there are millions of people stuck with interest rates on their student debt at 6, 7, 8%. People should be able to refinance those debts at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, some people will say, our critics will say, well, you know, it's a good idea making public colleges and universities tuition-free, but it's expensive. It costs a lot of money, and the truth is, it is an expensive proposal. But I will tell you what is even more expensive, and that is doing nothing. We must invest in our young people and the future of this country. And I will tell you something else, that at a time when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, it is absurd, it is disgraceful for Donald Trump and his friends to be talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the top 1%. I think that the overwhelming majority of the American people understand that it is far more important to invest in the future of our country than to give Donald Trump and his family, Donald Trump's family, a $4 trillion tax break if Trump were to repeal the estate tax. The Walton family, wealthiest family in America, would get a $50 billion tax break. So when you have Republicans telling us that it is okay to give tens and tens of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the richest people in this country, do not tell me that we cannot afford to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. All of you know that New Hampshire is a battleground state. All of you know that this is a very tight election, and in fact, New Hampshire could decide the outcome. So I am asking you here today not only to vote for Secretary Clinton, but to work hard to get your uncles and your aunts, to get your friends to vote. If anybody tells you that this election is not important, you ask them why the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson and other billionaires, why they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to elect their candidates. This election is enormously important for the future of our country. It is imperative that we elect Hillary Clinton as our next president. And with that, let me introduce the next President of the United States, Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It is great being here on the stage at UNH with my friend Bernie Sanders, one of the most passionate champions for equality and justice that I have ever seen, and someone who I am looking forward to working with to get the kind of agenda through our Congress that will begin to make our country stronger by providing the kind of support that working families and middle-class families so richly deserve. You know, Bernie's campaign energized so many young people, some of you in this crowd. And there is no group of Americans who have more at stake in this election than young Americans, because so much of what will happen will affect your lives, your jobs, the kind of country we are, the kind of future we want to build together. I'm proud of the primary campaign that Bernie and I ran. We ran a campaign about issues, not insults. And when it was over, we began to work together to try to figure out how we could take the issues we agreed on and come together, knowing we are stronger together, to come up with specific policies in education, in health, and so much else. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your support in this campaign. Now, we're going to need some help in Washington, and I hope New Hampshire will send your now governor, Maggie Hassan, to Washington as your senator. And I sure hope you will send Carol Shea Porter back to Washington. Isn't this one of the strangest elections you've ever seen? I really sometimes don't know what to make of it. Standing on that debate stage the other night, I was especially thinking about that. And look, I've been very clear about what I want to do if I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, and Americans increasingly are zeroing in on the fact that we're not only electing a president, we're electing a commander-in-chief. We're looking to see who can protect our country and provide steady and strong leadership around the world. I was very honored today to earn the endorsement of John Warner, a retired Republican senator, World War II veteran, former Secretary of the Navy who served under 2 Republican presidents. I served with him on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I have the deepest respect for his patriotism, and it's a great honor. He's never endorsed a Democrat for president before. And I'm also very grateful that a number of Republicans and independents here in New Hampshire have announced their support for this campaign. In fact, it is really an extraordinary honor that 150 Republicans here in New Hampshire are supporting this campaign because they understand how high the stakes are. The next 40 days will determine the next 40 years. So I'm going to close my campaign the way I started my public service and my career, fighting for kids and families. That's been the cause of my life, and it will be the mission of my presidency. And when you go to vote in November, or if you vote early, it's not just my name on the ballot. Every issue you care about, think about it, because in effect, it's on the ballot too. It's whether or not we continue to fight climate change, or we give in to denial. This is a big deal. I never thought, when I gave my acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention, that I would have to put in the following sentence: I believe in science. And climate change is real, it's serious, and we have to be united and committed in addressing it. I never thought I'd hear someone running for president, my opponent, who says he wants to appoint Supreme Court justices who would overturn marriage equality and turn the clock back on LGBT Americans, overturn a woman's right to make her own health care decisions, and reverse that fundamental right, and so much more. So there's a lot at stake, and that's why some of the analysts are saying more Americans will vote in this election than ever before. We had more people watching that debate than any presidential debate before. And that's why we have to focus on what we want to do, because I want to make a difference in your lives. And one of the biggest issues that I heard about throughout the campaign, that I hear about from every corner of our country, is how much an education costs. Bernie's absolutely right. I remember, when I went to college, my dad, who was a small businessman, he had saved up money, but I had to work. I had to work through college, work during the school year, work during summers, but that was okay. We were able to put it together. It wasn't so much that it endangered me or my family's financial future. And then I decided to go to law school, and my dad said, well, I can't help you. We're done. We can't help you. So I kept working. I got a small scholarship, but then I took out loans. And I paid those loans back. But I was lucky because I signed up for a program that gave me the opportunity to pay my loans back as a percentage of my income, not a fixed interest rate. That's why I could go to work for the Children's Defense Fund. I think I made $14,000 a year, as I recall. I could never have done that if I had had the kind of interest rates that so many young people now are facing. It's absolutely wrong. And it has undermined the fundamental right to pursue your dreams, to have that education, to get those opportunities that you so rightly deserve. Now, New Hampshire has the highest proportion of students with debt in the country, and the second highest average debt per student. As a student I met here in New Hampshire said, going to college should be hard, but paying for college shouldn't be so hard that it prevents you from getting your education. Indeed, here in New Hampshire, we've got so many young people graduating with debt who aren't able to get started in their careers, aren't able to do the jobs like I could do because they have to get a job that pays as much as possible to begin paying their debt down. So we should, and we will, make public colleges tuition-free for families earning less than $125,000 a year. And if you already have student debt, like so many students have here in New Hampshire, we will help you refinance it. It is absolutely outrageous that you cannot refinance student debt. And it is even worse that you're being charged interest rates that are so much higher than anything that anybody else is paying to buy a house, to buy a car, to borrow money for a business. I don't know how we got to where we are, but we are going to fix it. This is wrong. It's wrong for students, it's wrong for families, and it's wrong for our country. I also have met a lot of young people who want to start a business. They want to be entrepreneurs. It's the classic American story. Start that business in the garage or the basement. Get going. But they can't get credit because they have student debt. Nobody will help them out no matter how good the idea is. So we're going to put a moratorium so you don't have to pay your student debt back for a couple of years while you try to get your business started and you get the chance to get the credit you need. We're also going to provide loan forgiveness for people willing to go into public service or national service. And in Florida on Friday, I'll give a speech about why that's so important. Now, when you add it up, our plan will help millions of people save thousands of dollars. Our campaign has built a tool to help you see how our college plan will actually help you, not in general, but really specifically, you, the situation you're in. To check it out, go to hillaryclinton.com/calculator. Now, we have an example right here. And this presentation is what you can see when you go to our website. You can say, I have student debt. You can say, I'm planning for college. You can put in what your annual household income is, how much you will save. And we are trying to make it as specific as possible because I don't want anybody to miss out on what this plan can do for you. You can choose whether you have student debt. I met a young woman just yesterday in North Carolina who said, nobody really explained to me and my family what I was getting into. I hear that so much. You know, these financial aid forms, one's called FAFSA. It takes forever to fill out. And at the end of it, you really don't know what it means. Well, we're going to be really explicit. You know, we do have technology in America, and we ought to use it more to help people understand what they're getting into and to provide alternatives so that they don't make the wrong decisions for themselves. So please use this, you know. You will save $60,640 if you're in one of these categories, but there is a way to understand the choices you have to make for everybody. So I hope you will. Go to hillaryclinton.com/calculator. But I have to say this, none of this will happen if you all don't turn out and vote. None of it. You know, I see all the signs saying, I will vote. There's also a website. Please go to iwillvote.com to make sure you're registered. All the information is there. You put in your name, you put in your address, and through the miracle of technology, you can find out if you're registered, or maybe because you moved, you were purged from the records, and you have to register again. New Hampshire makes it easy. You can have same-day registration. So both Bernie and I are excited about what we can do together. I am really looking forward to working with him and other strong Democrats and Republicans who want to help solve problems again in America. Bringing people together is what I'm going to spend a lot of my time doing as your president. And if you've had a chance to see or meet my running mate, Tim Kaine, you know how hard he'll work to get things done and make it a high priority to produce results. So we're going to move now to the panel, and I'm very pleased to have Mary Jo Brown moderating, along with Doug Martin, who you heard from earlier. I know they've collected up questions from the crowd, but I will end by saying that I'm excited about what we can do to make college affordable, and especially, as Bernie rightly said, open the doors to families and young people who have been left out. We also want to make Pell Grants, once again, available year-round. And we want to make sure that we have specific help for certain groups of students. I'll end with this story. I taught at the University of Arkansas Law School some years ago, and I met a lot of students, not only in the law school, but students on campus. I'd go and eat with them and go to events with them, and I met a lot of students who scraped together the tuition money, but then something happened. You know, maybe they were already parents and their child care fell apart. Maybe they had to drive to and from school. They lived out in the country and their old car finally broke down and there was no public transportation. Or maybe they had a health emergency. And they would come and they would say to me, what can I do? Where can I get the $300 to fix the car? Where can I find child care? How can I pay the doctor's bills? And I realized that we got to take care of tuition, making sure that you can go and be able to start and finish school. We've got to make sure of costs and expenses, Pell Grants and other ways of helping. But we also have to fill the gaps that exist for a lot of students. So I helped to start something called the Arkansas Single Parent Scholarship Fund, because the people who had the most unexpected expenses were young parents, mostly, but not always, single moms, young, divorced, pretty much on their own, trying to improve their lives and prospects. And we started a fund to help fill those gaps. And, you know, we did it over so many years now, about 35 years, and we've helped thousands of people. So they didn't have to drop out. They didn't have to cut back. That's what I want for our country again, where we're helping each other, where we're reaching out and giving everybody a chance, and yes, sometimes a second or third chance, to make the most of their lives, to pursue their dreams. I think the American dream is big enough for everybody, and education is absolutely essential to it. So please make sure you come out and vote in this election. Thank you all.
Thanks for being here, everybody, today. It's great to be at UNH, where I graduated in 1989 with an art degree, and then I turned into an entrepreneur, where I've run 2 successful companies in Portsmouth for over 25 years. Today, however, I'm here as a mom that has an 11-year-old, and I'm watching the college years and her tuition creeping closer every year. She's got a lot of passions and a lot of interests, and I really am thinking a lot about what it will mean for us as a family to pay for her education. Doug's representing the student, I'm representing the mom, but let me tell you, Doug and I got just so many great questions from this audience, and my goal, my hope is that we get through as many of them as possible. I'll ask the first question in a moment, but before I do, I just need to tell both of you how many love notes there were on the questions. It was something that I didn't expect, random I love yous and to both of you. So please know the audience loves you. I hope I have... And now for the first question from me and about my daughter Haley. How can New Hampshire's education system, K through 12 and higher ed, do a better job of aligning my daughter's interests with her future career?
Well, I'll take the first stab at that. Your daughter's name is Haley? Well, I think for me, we've got to start looking at education as lifelong learning. And that needs to start in the earliest years of life. If we do a better job of working with families, after all, families are a child's first school, and parents and grandparents are a child's first teachers. If we do a better job helping to encourage and model and support children from literally 0 to 5, and I support universal pre-kindergarten because the more opportunities kids have, the better. And in families like Mary Jo's or mine or Bernie's, you know, we really spend a lot of time talking to our kids, reading to our kids. Well, I want every family to understand that's literally building a child's brain. 80% of your brain is physically formed by the age of 3. It's also building a vocabulary which serves as the foundation for learning in school, so that by the time somebody enters public school, enters kindergarten, first grade, there's not going to be such a big achievement gap. Kids are going to have a better chance to begin that process of learning. I want kids in every zip code to have good teachers and good schools that are modern, that are up to date. And we have a big digital gap. You know, it's hard to think about aligning interests if you're in one of the 5 million homes in America that have no internet. And so we've got to do a better job of making sure every child has access to technology, because that is how people learn and how they get information today. And then we've got to be sure that in school we recognize not every child learns the same way. Right? Right? And, you know, a lot of our schools and a lot of our teachers are really good at this. But unfortunately, in many places, there's an expectation that there's one way to learn, and I think there's been too many tests and not the right kind of tests to actually determine how people are learning and what they're learning. And because people learn differently, I think we made a mistake taking what used to be called vocational education, I call it technical education, taking it out of our high schools. We took it out, and that really sent a signal to a lot of our young people, well, hey, what they're interested in, what they're good at, how they learn is just no longer available to them. I'd like to bring back technical education into high schools. I would like to do more to connect our high schools up to community colleges so that while you're still in high school, you can even go to community college, you can get credentials, you can get credit for going to college. And I think if we recognize that each child really is unique and there are many different ways of learning, we can do a better job of aligning that, Mary Jo, and we can find out the talents. And I guess the final thing I would say is a lot of schools have lost so many of the extracurricular activities that used to allow kids to find themselves and express themselves. Theater and art, as well as technical education, have been eliminated from a lot of schools. And you know, kids learn through doing. Kids learn through music. Kids learn through art, through drama, through all kinds of other ways. And so making sure we have those opportunities for more kids, and then opening the doors to higher education. You know, we also want to make community college totally free. Community college, which should be the additional 2 years on top of elementary and secondary school. And then, of course, we're going to work to make sure that it's tuition free for as many American families and young people as we can reach. So I think if we begin to really look at this as a lifelong learning experience, and we have more on-ramps and off-ramps and return ramps so that even adults can go back and learn, and while they're learning, maybe earn at the same time in apprenticeships and other training programs, we'll get a 21st century education program. And we need to do that, because really the future is going to depend upon whether our young people have the skills and the education that they need.
There is not a lot that I can add to what Secretary Clinton said, because she's absolutely right. But let me just say this, that as a nation, we need to take a deep breath and ask ourselves a few questions in terms of children in general. How does it happen that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth? How does it happen that working families in New Hampshire and Vermont are paying a very, very significant parts of their income for childcare or pre-K education, while at the same time the childcare workers are being paid minimum wage or not much more than that? And what that tells me, and what the Secretary was essentially saying, is we need to change our national priorities and know that the most important resource that we have as a nation are our children. And that they must grow up healthy, they must get the intellectual and emotional nurturing that they need. What the Secretary said is absolutely right. Every psychologist understands the most important years of human life are 0 to 4. And we have got to stand with the children, stand with the parents, and make sure that all of our kids get the quality pre-K and child care that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have our next question from Doug.
So this is a question from the audience. How will your plan affect current college students?
Well, as soon as we can get it passed, it will affect all students. And it will also affect debt that current college students are having to take on. Right now, we have so many students who are in the midst of their education. They're in college. A lot of them are working jobs to be able to afford to be in college, but they still can't get by, so they're taking on more debt. So in 2 ways, we're going to begin to reduce costs for everybody in college, about to go to college, and we're going to take on existing debt, because under our plan, there's not going to be future debt if we do this right. So that's exactly how I think it could make a big difference in the lives of students right now, and certainly those like Haley and others who are going to be coming up over the years.
Let me just add to that. I am a member of the Senate Health, Education, and Labor Committee, and this legislation will go through that committee. And I can assure you, make no mistake about it, that I will work with President Clinton to make sure that this legislation is passed as quickly as we possibly can. And to make that happen, we need your help. Politics and government issues do not stop on Election Day. We need your help and the help of the American people to help us stand to change national priorities. We need millions of people telling Congress that public colleges and universities must be tuition free. So we're going to work together on making that happen as soon as humanly possible.
Our next question from the audience for both of you is, how will the debt-free college plan affect private colleges versus public colleges?
Well, this is a very important question. The way our college system is set up, states have responsibility, as you know, for funding public colleges and universities. Now, both public and private colleges and universities get some federal aid. But our challenge is how we first deal with public colleges and universities in terms of making it tuition free. And we also have more leverage because, as Bernie just said, it's not only putting pressure on the Congress, we also have to put pressure at the state level. Because why are we in the situation we find ourselves today when it comes to public colleges and universities? In part because states have cut back on their contributions to public colleges and universities, which in turn has forced boards of trustees and administrators to raise tuition. So this is a partnership. We are setting this up to work with states and to make it clear it's kind of carrots and sticks, that states that are willing to work with us to increase their contributions will be rewarded by this program. And states that are not, we think, will be under political pressure to do that. The private schools will benefit directly from the debt repayment programs. Because if you go to a private college or university and you take out debt, you take it out from the same programs, from government programs, from private programs. So students will be benefited directly in that way to get existing debt paid down. Now, ultimately, I would also like to see private colleges and universities taking a hard look at their costs. I mean, we hope that this will launch a serious discussion about what are the most important parts of a college experience that should be supported both in the public and the private systems. And that everybody, people in administration, people who are alumni, everybody will say, hey, let's try to prioritize here about what it is we need to invest our money in. And we think that will help begin to reduce costs on the private side as well. But private college and university students will absolutely benefit from paying down and refinancing and getting out from under student debt.
Thank you. Doug has our next audience question.
All right, so this is also from the audience. How will your plan help those who have double-digit interest rates?
Well, I think, as the Secretary and I have both said, it is absurd that right now there are people in this country paying 10% interest rates on their student debt when you could refinance your home for 3% or buy a car at 2%. Makes no sense at all. So what this plan says is you can go out and refinance your debt at the lowest interest rates you can find. And this will mean for many, many people a substantial reduction in their interest rates and significant reductions in what they have to pay off in terms of their debt.
Absolutely. Now, I want to just add to what the senator said, that we are going to end the federal government making money off of lending money to students to get your education. And we think if the federal government's going to be involved, it ought to be a sort of revolving fund paying out without making money off of it, and then as it's paid back at low interest rates, paying out again, keeping the virtuous cycle going. But I know, Senator Sanders and I had exactly the same experiences out on the campaign trail. I mean, I would say to groups like this, who has student debt? In fact, let's do this right now. Who has student debt? Okay, look at all those hands. Does anybody here know, do you have an interest rate, let's say 8% or higher? Okay, look at all those hands. We've had, in effect, 0 interest rates for 8 years. It's outrageous. And it's really so unfair. It makes me furious that young people and their families have been told the only way they can borrow money to go to college, that's really their collateral. They're signing up, they're doing the work, they're trying to get ahead, but the only way they can do it is to sign up for loans 8, 10, 12%. I think the highest I ran into, Bernie, was 14%. And I just, my heart broke for this young woman because she's going to be paying that back until she's a grandmother. And that is just so wrong.
You know, when I was here in New Hampshire, I don't know if anybody in the audience is having this experience. I ran into a woman. She said, Bernie, I'm not just paying off my kids' student loan, I'm still paying off my own student loan. Now, the secretary made a point earlier, which, as politicians do, is worth repeating. When you are faced with huge debt and high interest rates, you need to go out and get the job that pays you the most money, not the job that your heart wants you to do. Give you an example. We have a desperate need on another issue that the Secretary and I have worked on is primary care in this country, expanding community health centers. All right? We have a serious crisis in terms of primary health care where even people with insurance can't find a medical home, can't go to the doctor they need. We need tens of thousands of primary health care physicians. And there are many young people who would love to do that work. But you know what? It doesn't pay as much as other types of work in medicine. So you have people who want to be primary care physicians, can't do that. Can't be dentists in underserved areas working at a community health center because they're paying off $300,000 in debt for a dental school degree. And that is why this issue is so important. It frees people up to do what needs to be done, to do what they want to do, not just go out and get jobs to make as much money as they can to pay off those debts. That's a big deal.
So we, unfortunately, only have time for one more question. And I want to reiterate, the questions from you as an audience are incredible and diverse and impressive. So I hope this is the beginning of the discussion. Doug, as the student, I think I should give you the honor of asking the last question. Sure. With the $33,000 in debt, I think. Was that right?
What was that?
Wasn't it $33,000 in debt?
Yes, I don't like to be reminded, so. How do you plan on making college cheaper for both in-state and out-of-state students?
Well, the tuition-free plan will apply to public colleges and universities no matter where the student comes from. And I think that has a couple of consequences. Because tuition has increased so much, a lot of colleges, public colleges and universities, have been recruiting not just out-of-state students, but out-of-country students, because they will pay so much more. That then reduces the number of in-state students whose families have lived here, have paid taxes here, and thought they would go to their state college or university. So part of what we hope will happen here is that there will be actually more room in the public colleges and universities for in-state students, and then whatever the percentage is for out-of-state students, it will not have the kind of impact that would decrease the number of in-state. Because if you're trying to figure out how to get to that budget, you're going to be looking for people who pay more, and that's usually out-of-state and even out-of-country people. But I just want to finish an additional thought about Bernie's last point. The way that refinancing will work is we're going to get the interest rates down, and then we're going to provide every student who will take it, and I hope it's every student, the chance for an income repayment plan, like what I was talking about that I had, so that we get the cost down. You reduce that interest rate, you bring it down so that your overall costs will be less over the life of paying it back. And then we put you in a program where you pay it back as a percentage. I mean, this is really personal to me, because the only way, since I was out on my own and I didn't have any big financial cushion and my dad was unable to help me, I would never have been able to go to work for the Children's Defense Fund, which has given me the greatest joy and sense of mission in my life, if I had not been able to pay it back as a percentage of my income. Just like so many of my other friends, they got out of law school, they went to big law firms. Whether they wanted to or not, they had to in order to pay back their loans. So we think this will be liberating and empowering. And remember, I also said, we want to provide loan forgiveness, not just reducing the interest rates and providing income contingency programs, but loan forgiveness for public service and national service. That's the way it used to be, and that's the way we want it to be again for students today and students tomorrow.
Let me just say this. Today we talked about an enormously important issue, and that is making public colleges and universities tuition-free. That's just one issue. We have got to transform our energy system and effectively combat climate change. That's the future of this planet. We have got to rebuild a crumbling infrastructure. We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We have to have pay equity for women. We need immigration reform. We need to reform a broken criminal justice system. Those are all of the issues that we are dealing with. We are. What Secretary Clinton says, it's not the next 4 years, it is the next 40 years. And let me close on how I began. If we were a poor country, this would be a very different discussion. We would say, gee, we wish we could make public colleges and universities tuition-free. We just can't afford it. We wish we could rebuild our infrastructure. We just don't have the money to do that. That is not the case. The case is that you got the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson and other billionaires trying to buy this election to protect their interests. What this campaign is about is protecting our interests. And let's get out and vote and make sure that this is the next president of the United States.
Thank you, everyone. Stronger together, learn more, and vote. And don't just you vote. Bring 3 friends to vote. Thank you for being here.